Welcome back to the channel. Tonight we will be working on this 2007 Chevy Silverado, and it was brought to me from another shop. When they had it, they said it was running and driving, no problems, no issues, until they went and parked it. From then, they went to start it, nothing happened, no dash lights, no anything. So what they did in their possession, replaced the fuse box under the. And so they decided to look at it. They did a couple things to it. One of the main things I know that they did was replace the fuse box under the hood, and still to no avail, no start, no crank, no nothing. And so they towed it here. So the other day, off camera, obviously, I took a look at it, found a couple things wrong with it, but I'm going to get you a shot of that and just basically run you through what I did. Okay, and so actually one of the first things that I ended up doing, I replaced the battery because it was completely dead. From then on, I was able to crank it, and it would actually crank for me, but it would hit one time and shut off, and then it would crank. It would hit a couple times. And so with that, just based off of experience, it sounded to me like the engine was not getting fuel. And so I started to look at that. I was able to scan the vehicle, and there was no communication with the fuel pump control module. Basically, this fuse box that they had put in, a spare one or a used one, I don't know where they got it, the circuit for feeding B plus to the fuel pump control module constantly was not working. It was not powering up the fuse, so something internal. For me, while it was here, decided to just add a circuit with a fuse to power up the fuel pump control module wire on the harness, no different than what a fuse panel would do. Once I did that, it was able to crank, start, and run, and I thought I was done with it. And so once it was up and running and driving, I thought I was done with it. I went to move it the next day to park it out front for it to get picked up. But when I went to do so, a bunch of lights came on the dash, like ABS, traction, and a bunch of other ones, and then it actually stalled out on me. So long story short, and I didn't show any diagnosis of it just because it's such a common problem, the BCM is basically causing all the electrical problems. I believe what happened with them in their possession, that BCM started acting up. They kind of just threw whatever at it, the fuse panel, which then created another problem because the fuel pump module wasn't powered up, so on and so forth. So now we're back to what I believe is the original problem that they were dealing with. Faulty BCM. It's pretty common out there. Didn't bother filming, diagnosing, checking, and all that. The one thing I will say, this particular situation, the BCM still communicated. It just didn't do everything properly. Most of the other times, the BCM does not communicate, so it's a little bit easier to pinpoint towards the BCM as long as you have all your powers, ground, and communication lines. So with that, this one's just going to be a quick one showing you guys what route I took to try to get this up and running, and just see if all the BCM issues are resolved and gone, and maybe we can get this back to the customer. Okay guys, so here is the original BCM. I picked up a used one that should be comparable, and as many know by now, the Autel is just terrible with in-circuit reading the EEPROM. So I've resulted to removing the EEPROM, and at this point I can literally just transfer it onto that board. But just before doing so, I do want to read the EEPROM and save that information just so that I have that in case of anything. So I'm going to go ahead, read the EEPROM, and continue from there. Okay guys, so I've got the EEPROM transferred over. We'll go ahead and put that together, put it in the truck, and see what it does. And I don't know how well the camera will pick up. most of the time, I guess these end up getting water damaged. This has some slight discoloration towards the bottom of the circuit board. Is kind of cloudy. This from like this section down, even towards there on the side. It's a little bit cloudy, more cloudy than towards the top. So there you can see some by those numbers. So I think at some point possibly some water got in there. Not completely dead, just not fully operational. Okay, so I wanted to basically show you a little mistake that I did, kind of just to make sure to be transparent, and maybe it'll help some of you guys out there. When I was cleaning this is the new donor board. The EEPROM is already on it, but I made a boo-boo. I was cleaning the board with some of this wick, and I, by mistake, ended up lifting a pad. The pad was the one on this end, furthest over here. So basically that top left corner pad. I'm not sure if you can tell, but there is the pad. Luckily, I kind of caught it by mistake because as I was cleaning it, I noticed that one pad, or that where the pad was, the color was different. And sure enough, got that feeling in my stomach, and I turned the wick around, and that's what I saw. So I thought that for the moment I was done, and then would have to source another BCM to try to not make any mistakes and continue on. But being that it's a Friday and the work day, I wouldn't be able to source anything till next week. I decided to kind of play around. What I ended up doing was I ended up mapping out and finding where that pad went. It actually goes to, I think, like the 7th pin or something on this processor here. There wasn't any way for me to tap into one of those pins because I kept basically soldering was joining 2 pins at one time. So I had to clean that up off of those pins on the processor, and I did get lucky because at least this top row, the top row of the EEPROM, I did get lucky because that top row of the EEPROM, which is where the pad is messed up, is actually on the backside. So those 4 go through right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's the most forward one. So it's got that through hole. And so I got lucky, and I decided to see if I can basically make a jumper wire from there up to the leg of the EEPROM. And all I ended up using was just a spare wire stripped back, and I took one strand and cut it. And then so from there, since I knew which pin it went to here, all I did once I soldered it, just to make sure everything was good, was I ohmed out from that pin to actually this leg, which then tells me that it's made its connection all the way around. I mean, everything ohms out. I end up having to clean a lot here because I was ohming to make sure 2 weren't touching, and I got all those cleaned up. That EEPROM is good. The jumper wire is good. Hopefully everything should work. Again, if you've been following me and some of this dabbling that I've been doing with board work, I've been realizing, or I've been trying to get better with getting the EEPROM to sit well, which I'm doing well with that, but today was one that I didn't expect to run into, but I learned to not go too hard with the wick, or else you're gonna lift the pads. Okay, so I've got that one plugged in. You can see for right now I've got the case off just to see and make sure that everything works. There is the jumper wire, so hopefully I didn't mess up too much or anything else up, but we'll take a look. We'll see if it'll crank. And all right. So I didn't do too much damage. And before, when it would just key up and do nothing, the Prendle light had no line under the P. So those are, I guess, some signs of bus issues that, if it's gone now, we know it was due to the BCM. No check engine light. Do have, looks like airbag and the traction tire. I think that was there. The airbag and tire was there, but traction, gonna need to look into that. Okay, so as you can see, obviously the BCM is working. I'm gonna continue just checking, make sure that the same thing doesn't happen again. So I'm pretty sure it won't. A few things to keep in mind. This BCM is just a spare one that I had in my basically play box that I have in case I run into something or I want to practice or learn or so on and so forth. So it actually happened to be one that seemed to be somewhat compatible. I'll have to just double check that now that I know it's actually operational. Again, not too crazy or anything because BCM failures on GMs seems to be a pretty common issue. I just didn't want to bore you guys with the same old stuff. With that, I just again wanted to see and make sure if I could get it running with BCM and then with this EEPROM procedure. Again, it's showing you guys that if you're able to read it in circuit, you can simply just read one and then write the other one. In my case, again with the Autel tooling, it's just terrible reading in circuit, so I swapped the EEPROM. But in doing so, I created some boo-boos, and I needed to learn how to fix that if I wanted to get something happening tonight. So thank you for watching. Again, I know it's nothing crazy, but hopefully at least it was somewhat educational. I'll try to get this one wrapped up, but that's it for this one, and we'll catch you on the next one.